Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto went back in time to save Rin, part 1. Subscribe if you enjoy the video, let's start the story. Do it. Rin stared at Kakashi, his Chidori chittering in the rain, arsing from raindrop to raindrop. This was it. This was how she was going to die. She had hoped desperately to die of old age one day. To at least live long enough to have a family would have been fantastic. But dying for the sake of her village. To prevent other Konoha ninja from dying. That was a good death. She could accept that. Rin, Kakashi muttered, his voice drowned out by the storm that fell around them. She chose to believe the drops falling from his face weren't rain. He leveled his arm towards her heart. I'm so sorry. You have to, she smiled at him. She needed to be strong. She didn't want to die. It's for the good of Konoha. Was she telling that to him or herself? Her heart was racing. And the chakra of that beast inside of her was running wild. It was going to break free soon. If Kakashi didn't kill her now, then those other ninja would take her to Konoha. Where she would die anyways. And so would hundreds of others. It's for the good of Konoha Kakashi. Please before it's too late. They had seconds before those mist ninja finally found her and she was their bomb once again. It was a shame. She would have liked to become a great ninja. To see Konoha one more time. To watch the ninja that Kakashi would become. To fall in love. There was so much she wanted to see. He needed to kill her before she changed her mind. Kakashi lunged forward, the rain parted for him, guiding him right towards her. For a brief second it looked like he was in two places at once. Several feet away from her and with his hand inches away from her beating heart. She didn't want to die. Time froze. The rain hung in mid-air like crystal teardrops. Kakashi's lightning was little more than a wild spider's web caught in a flash freeze. The ninja in the background didn't move, suspended in mid-air like actors in a play. The only thing that moved was that red eye that stared at her, slowly twisting and sucking her in. It felt like her body was being sucked through a straw. At first there was resistance, a futile effort, as she was too big, too solid. Then, something gave. And she began to slide, forwards, backwards, left, right, up, down, from every direction she was pushed, pulled, or dragged into that straw that was barely bigger than a pea. It hurt. It hurt a lot. Was this what death felt like? 1,000 miles long, the width of a pinhead. It continued to stretch her, drawing her ever thinner to the point where she might break. She was still there in front of Kakashi. But she was somewhere else too. Then came the snap, whatever had anchored her with Kakashi finally let go, and she flew towards her destination like a rubber band stretched to the limit. In one moment Kakashi was there, then the next he was gone. The rain vanished, the forest around her changed, and the sun was shining. What? She looked around, panic setting in. Where was she? What happened to Kakashi? Was she dead? No. That wasn't right. She could still feel that thing wiggling inside of her trying to break out. It was only a matter of time. The seal wasn't meant to last. The fuse was already lit and she was a bomb that was about to go off. I need to get away, she mumbled, taking a step forward. She needed to find the nearest people and get as far away from as possible. Nobody should have to die because of her. Bracing against the tree she felt how drained her body truly was. There was nothing left. And everything hurts. If she stopped now the three tails would be unleashed and who knows how many people would die. She needed to kill herself. The cliff, a river, enemy ninja. Any of those would do. The seal was about to break. Any moment now the three tails would be free, already she could feel its voice calling to her, gnawing at the back of her every thought. It promised power and safety, a quick death if she just stopped fighting it. No way in hell, you monster. It growled in response, its voice like the roar of a waterfall. With one more step Rin saw her final resting spot. She didn't know where she was, a cliff somewhere warm and sunny, far away from any real village. It overlooked a beautiful valley full of life and trees. A beautiful last sight. Hopefully someone finds me and gives me a proper burial. She took that last step and closed her eyes, letting everything go. There would be nothing left after this. For the first time in her life she could finally stop fighting. It felt good. Hopefully Kakashi was alive and Konoha was fine. This was the right thing to do. The wind pushing against her face as she fell to her death felt cool, clashing with the warm sunlight. Hey. She heard a voice. And her eyes snapped open. The ground was coming fast and fear clenched her heart. Then someone caught her. He had blonde hair and blue eyes. With a Konoha headband. Don't worry. I got you. No, 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 he was saving her. The seal was breaking, there was no way that she could kill herself in time. She thrashed trying to push away from the other ninja. Let me go. I need to die. What? Hey. Watch it. The boy shouted even as her elbow slammed into cheek. They landed onto the ground in a jumbled heap, the momentum of her fall sending them tumbling into the nearest tree and bush. What the hell? Is there any way to thank someone for saving you? The seal broke. Oh no, Rin held her stomach. feeling dread as the first bit of the beast's chakra began to pour into her. She looked towards the orange-clad ninja that had just saved her life. He looked to be her age. His selfless nature would be his own downfall. With the last bit of her free will, she gave him a smile. You need to run. Now. Then she was lost to the beast. It was consuming her, eating her mind, body, and soul. Naruto, another voice. This one sounded familiar. Like a distant memory. What are you? She looked and saw a familiar tall man come running. He had long white hair that was probably longer than she was tall. If she was in her right mind, she felt like she might have remembered him. What the fuck? Then everything went red. She was alive. Or was she dead? It was hard to tell. Everything hurt, but that had been her normal state for weeks. And it wasn't even that bad, more the dull pain like a sprained pinky, just all over her body. Her chakra was still there, a wonderful reminder that she was very much alive. But so too was the Sanbi. It was fainter than before, like it was locked up tight in some faraway corner of her soul. So she was alive. When? Why? How? Leaning up, she saw her room was well lit and clean. The warm blanket fell off of her, revealing the numerous bandages that covered her chest, so that she looked like a mummy. That explained the hurt. Not so much how she was still alive. You shouldn't move so much. A small voice from beside her croaked. She looked down to see a small toad that sat next to her. The green light of medical ninjutsu poured from her hands. Oh, Rin lay back down, staring at the toad for a moment. Did Minato-sensei send you? Nah, that Jiraiya boy summed me up. I think he's wanting to explain things to you. She lowered her hands and gave a low grumble. I'm just her. Patch up his hasty seal on the three-tailed beast. Jiraiya. She knew that name. Wait. Jiraiya, as in the Jiraiya, one of the Sannin, and Minato-sensei's sensei. HMPH, don't tell him that or his head will get even fatter. That toad looked her in the eyes. I'm Ma, by the way. It's nice to meet you, Ma. I've only really met Gamabunta once before, but he seemed like a nice enough boss. Aside from the fact that he reeked of alcohol. Do you know what happened to me? Anything at all? Ma scooted closer to her, her hands moving down towards her stomach. I know that you have the three-tailed beast inside of you, and that Jiraiya and Naruto managed to push the beast back long enough to place another sloppy seal on you, then called me here to try and make something decent. Do you know how hard it is to work like this? It's one thing to make a working seal from scratch. It's another thing to try and salvage something from scraps. Ma shouted, her right foot thumping on the ground. Sorry. Ma sighed, it's not your fault, dear. That burden rests on whoever sealed the beast in you to begin with. But I'm just about finished with you. It's a good thing I read Minato boy's notes. So I'm safe. Rin couldn't fight back the tears that fell from her eyes. She didn't have to die. She got to live to see Konoha again, to see Kakashi and all of her friends and family. As safe as any ninja. Ma touched her stomach with both hands, eyes still locked onto her. This seal is still a mess, but it's the best I can do. It draws its strength from you. The stronger your will is, the stronger the seal is. Remember that. Ma vanished in a poof of smoke. For the first time in what felt like ages, Rin found herself smiling. Her happiness was dull like the pain, but it was still there, constantly reminding her to smile. She felt where her seal was on her stomach. She was now. But most importantly, she was alive. I need to find Kakashi. Her stomach burned when she sat up, and her arms and legs felt like jello. He's probably worried sick about me. He might even think I'm dead. Minato and Miss Kushina too. They'd probably need her for another mission soon anyways. Kakashi was such a dork, he refused to let anybody but her treat his wounds. It was annoying, but kind of nice too. Sliding open the thin wooden door, Rin came face to face with a verdant green forest, the same forest that she had tried to kill herself in. It smelled like a forest should, thick with sap, pollen, and green. But there was a hint of salt to everything. Were they near the ocean? Where on earth was she anyways? And how did she get here? Damn it, brat, I told you to quit worrying about her, a gruff manly voice echoed from around the corner. She'll be fine, just focus on your training. That was Lord Jiraiya. Or at least she thought it was. She'd only briefly met the man once when he interrupted their training to grumble at Minato. That was a week after Obito died. Still, the man was as famous as Lady Tsunade and Lord Orochimaru. She turned around the corner and was blinded by the setting sun for a moment. Was it that late? Or was it early? Her sense of time was all messed up. Standing in a wide open field was Jiraiya, looming over the blonde boy that had saved her. Naruto, if she heard right. Lord Jiraiya. She coughed, bracing her hand against one of the support beams of the patio. The two looked at her. Hey. You're awake. Naruto shouted. He tried to move forward, but Jiraiya blocked him. I told you she was fine, now get back to training, I'll talk to her. Jiraiya pushed Naruto back a step, pointing towards a makeshift training dummy. Naruto pouted, and Jiraiya sighed. You can talk to her later, okay? But right now give me a bit. That didn't sound good. Jiraiya walked up to her, even as he stood on the ground and her on the patio he towered over her, making her feel like even more of a child. His smile wasn't a happy one and he scratched the back of his head nervously. Let's talk inside for a bit. Are you feeling okay? A little tired, she admitted, placing a hand on her stomach. It felt like she hadn't eaten for days. But I'm a lot more hungry. Jiraiya nodded, stepping past her, opening the door for her and gesturing inside with his hand. We'll eat in a bit, but for now I think we need to have a little chat. The inside of the house was just as clean and spotless as the room she had been in before, only there was a pile of bags sitting in the corner and several empty ramen cups on the countertop. They made her stomach growl, twisting in pain. Right then, so before we get started, can I get your name? Jiraiya laughed, plopping down onto the couch. It was a nervous laugh. I think I might know who you are, but I want to be certain. Rin sat down on a chair, sinking into its comfort. She gave him a small bow, which only made her stomach flare in pain. I'm Rin Nahara, sir, you taught my sensei Minato. Damn, Jiraiya tightened his grip on the couch before he let out a long breath of air, relaxing his body. I was really hoping you were going to say something else. Well, do you want the good news or bad news first? Her heart felt like it was sinking. Did Kakashi die? What happened? Why was she still alive? Was she still going to die? The good news. Please actually be something good. Well, the good news is that the third shinobi war is over. Oh, that's excellent. Rin found herself clapping, the sense of dread that had washed over her finally vanished. If the war was over, then she could have a normal life, one where she didn't have to watch her friends die every day. It ended 10 years ago. What? She must not have heard him right. She could believe 10 days, she'd seen others survive comas that long. There was no way she could have missed 10 years like that. She was still short and somewhere between child and adult. I'm sorry, I thought you said the war ended 10 years ago. I did, Jiraiya groaned. Listen Rin, I don't know how to tell you this. But I think you've traveled forward in the future for about 13 years. No. She stood too fast, her head spinning with vertigo, sending her back down to the chair, clutching her head. That's impossible, you're lying. Kakashi is 27 years old. Jiraiya said, firmly standing up and walking over to the bags. He pulled out a photo. Here, take a look. She didn't want to. This was just some elaborate prank. A fever dream. Anything but real. The photo slid into her hands. Naruto was in it, looking displeased about something, as was the other boy, equally displeased. The girl between them looked rather happy. And the man behind them, their sensei, was tall, gray-haired, with one eye covered by a headband, and was wearing a mask. Kakashi. There was no other person it could be. Kakashi didn't have an older brother, and his father was gone. At least he looked happy. There was only one question she could ask. How? I was hoping you could tell me that. Jiraiya kneeled down in front of her. All I know is that Kakashi reported that you had disappeared and there were searches for you. But you were reported dead when the Mizukage claimed to have the Sanbi sealed within him. Rin bit her lip and tried to think. That night was a blur, Kakashi was there, it was raining. And she was going to die. Wait, that was it. There was a red eye. I remember a red eye and feeling like I was being pulled away. Then I was here. So nothing to go on. Jiraiya sat back down onto the couch and rubbed his eyes. Right then, now for the rest of the bad news. There's more. She was not ready for this. Her heart was racing, what else could go wrong? A lot. Minato-sensei was dead. So was his wife Kushina, the third, as well. Orochimaru was a traitor to the village, and Tsunade was now the Hokage. Now because she was a group of super powerful ninjas called the Akatsuki were going to be coming after her. Rin stirred a ramen cup, her medical training and body told her that she should eat. But her appetite was completely destroyed. It felt like she was all alone, drifting along in the world with no one to cling onto. Now she couldn't even practice medical ninjutsu because of the Sanbi. Her chakra control was all over the place and it was likely to only get worse as time went on, as her seal began to fade. Hi. The blonde boy, Naruto, almost shouted as he came bounding up to her like a puppy. I'm Naruto, I'm the one that saved you earlier. Yay, I know, Rin offered him what little smile she could. I'm Rin, and thank you. No problem. He sat down next to her, slurping from his ramen, as happy as can be. I would have done it for anybody, but I'm kind of happy it was you. Why's that? Did he know who she was? What is she now? Well, we're the same. Yay. He pointed towards his own stomach. I have the Kyuubi sealed inside of me, it has been there since I was born. And you have the Sanbi in you, right? So we're kind of the same. Plus we're both Konoha ninjas. Rin let out a laugh, feeling her whole body shaking with each breath. It hurt, but it felt good too. Well, I guess we are the same, Naruto, thank you for that. And don't worry, it sucks being alone, I know what that's like, so I won't let you be alone. He had such a large kind smile, it reminded her a lot of Kushina and a bit of Minato with that hair. You have my word, and I never go back on my word, that's my ninja way, believe it. Rin stared at her cup of ramen, there was always somebody that wanted to protect her. Thank you Naruto, I'll be sure to hold you to that. The ramen was cold. Sleep. The roof was divided into 35 tiles in a 5x7 grid. Each tile had approximately 73 grains cross-woven in a thatched pattern, meaning there were 2,555 grains in total. Which meant she wasn't asleep. Her bed was soft blanket warm, her stomach was full, and only a dull ache from her injuries remained. In theory she should be able to fall asleep. Flipping her pillow over to the cool side for the 100th time, Rin let out a long breath that stung where her ribs had been bruised when Naruto caught her. This was all just some twisted dream. None of it was real. There was no way that she was still alive. No way that she was the Jinchuriki of the Sambi. And she definitely wasn't 13 years into the future where everybody she loved was either dead or an adult. It just wasn't possible. It wasn't. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. No matter how real it felt. That was why she couldn't go to sleep. Because this wasn't real. None of it was real. And she could only sleep if it was real. That was the reason why. Her pulse rate was resting at 42 beats per minute, slightly above average for a shinobi of her age. She should be freaking out. Her pulse rate should be much higher. Rin. A voice Obito's voice echoed through her head like a branch scratching on the window. Her heart rate doubled, blood raced. She shot up searching for the voice. In the corner where the wall gave way to a giant boulder was Obito's half-crushed body, his lone eye locked onto her. Obito. She croaked, her voice like the groaning of a dead tree. It was Obito. She needed to save him. He was right there. She could still save him. She could do more. Why wasn't her body moving? Why was it stuck to the ground? She couldn't move, she could breathe. Help me Rin, he begged. You promised you'd watch over me. She was drowning in a sea of air. She couldn't breathe, let alone talk. Help me Rin, another one. This one looming above her from a crack in the panel. Help me Rin, help me Rin, help me Rin. 1,000 Obitos called out to her from 1,000 places. He was in every shadow, glaring at her, clawing at her. It was her fault. He died because of her. If she had been stronger, a better medic, a better fighter, anything is better than anything, then he'd be alive. They shouldn't have just left him there. I'm going to kill you. It was Kakashi. He was directly above her, kunai pointed at her heart. That's what you want, right? To die so that you won't kill anybody else. She fell backwards away from Obito and Kakashi, their forms turning to water and chasing after her, filling her lungs and pushing her downward. Down. 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 Deeper. Deeper. Darker. She kept falling, breathing in the water as easily as it was air. Only a lone light surrounded her in the growing dark abyss. There was nothing around her but the dark, empty water. A shadow the size of the night moved, its form like the empty space between stars. It rumbled like a storm as the water stirred about her. The red eye larger than the desert sun glared down at her, searing her with its hatred. She was drawn towards it. The water pulled them closer and closer. The eye vanished, and it was only then did she become aware of its intent. It wanted to consume her. But the last of her strength she tried to pull away. The current was too strong. It was going to swallow her whole. She woke up screaming. Sweat clung to every part of her body, forcing the cloth and bandages to cling to her. Every heartbeat stung, like it was a wild animal caged inside of her. Her breath came in sharp gasps. Her ears were ringing. Rin. A voice shouted, and footfalls from outside her room sounded like thunder. Her door swung open, and that loud blonde boy came barging in. His face contorted with panic. Are you okay? I heard a scream. Did he have to be so loud? Her body was shaking. She couldn't answer, let alone breathe. Her throat was dry. And everything. Absolutely everything hurts. This shouldn't be real. She shouldn't be here. She shouldn't know Naruto. His touch was like acid. Burning her skin with the bitter cold of frost. You're hot. Did he always have to scream? He ran towards the door, crashing into everything along the way. Hold on. I'll get some water. Just like that she was alone again, alone in this horrible lie. Nightmare, girl. Jiraiya groaned. Pulling himself into her room like he was pulling himself out of bed. The large man walked without a sound. His familiar presence, no matter how distant it may be, brought her an inch of peace. She nodded, teetering on the brink of falling back down into a panic. It felt like everything that had happened yesterday was slamming into her, trying to break her down. She was in the future 13 years where she just happened to run into Jiraiya after being saved by his student. This was just some horrible dream. You want to talk about it? Jiraiya sat down next to her, his body collapsing down like a snow-capped mountain. When she didn't say anything he continued. Was it the war? The past? The Sambi? Yes, she eked out, her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. Jiraiya groaned, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The Sambi is one of the tricky ones. Legends say that it surrounds itself in a nightmare-inducing mist. Did you have any nightmares like that before? Rin shook her head, not trusting her voice. She had a few dreams with Obito in them, but none like that, even after his death. Her dreams of Obito were of the happy times, of him being late and them laughing about it. Never of his death. And then there was Kakashi. Kakashi would never hurt her. Not after he made that promise to Obito. Naruto came bumbling in, looking like he got more water onto him than into the cup. Here, the cup sloshed as he came crashing down beside her. I brought you some water. Overcome by thirst, she drank the nearly full cup in one gulp. It burned on the way down before it cooled her. Thank you, Naruto. Are you okay now? Naruto scooted closer to her, his large eyes danced against his furrowed brow, he kept switching between smiling and frowning. He seemed so familiar. In so many different ways. In a way he reminded her a lot of both Minato-sensei and Obito. Better, she answered, placing a hand against her chest. Her heartbeat was erratic, but stabilizing. Deep even breaths, she was panicking, that's all it was. It was perfect given her situation. Do you want to talk about it? Naruto asked. Your dream, that is. I hear that helps. Rin bit her lip, clutching at her heart. How could she tell them about that dream? They weren't there. They wouldn't understand. Naruto wasn't even born. How could they possibly understand her? She was all alone in this world. Everybody she had ever known was either dead or 13 years older. Kakashi was practically an old man now. Heart rate rising. Panic setting in. She needed to calm down. Just calm down. It wasn't working. Nothing was working, she couldn't stop herself, the cliff was right there, she needed to jump. Rin, Naruto's voice drew her back from the cliff. He was touching her hand, staring at her with the concern of a friend. It was working too. His soft smile was anchoring her to the world. It was just a dream. So don't worry so much. Rin swallowed, her throat stung. This wasn't good, was she getting sick? That would explain why her face felt warm. She must be running a temperature. Thanks, Naruto. I think I'll be fine for now though. I've just been through a lot. Wanna talk about it? Naruto asked. Brat, Jiraiya growled. Leave the girl alone, the last thing she needs is you beaming at her like the sun. It's fine, Rin gave what little smile she could muster. It wasn't much, just an echo of what she remembered a smile feeling like. Barely scraps. I think I'm feeling better now. Thank you. Still, Naruto whined. Enough, Jiraiya grumbled, falling back down onto his back. It's late, I'm tired, I'll just sleep here. Turn off the light, brat. Wait. You're sleeping in here? She'd slept in the same tent as her team before, but sharing a room was different. Kind of. She had known Kakashi and Obito for years. They grew up together. Well yay, Jiraiya waved his hand at her like she was just a child. Helps me keep an eye on your seal. He gave a giant yawn that smelled faintly of beer and rolled over like a bear preparing to hibernate. Besides, if you can sleep in the same room with us it'll save me a lot later on. What? How would that save you money? And what her protests were drowned out by the sound of Jiraiya snoring, it was like the coming of a thunderstorm. Can't you talk to him? Rin looked towards Naruto. Instead of the ally she was expecting to find, she saw that Naruto had gotten his own blanket and pillow. His soft snores are already merging with Jiraiya's. If she couldn't sleep before, now there was no way she was going to be able to sleep with these two snoring in her room. That was her last coherent thought. So it was real. That was the truth that glared down at the intensity of the desert sun, searing away her resistances. She could feel everything, the narrative was coherent when it needed to be, and dreams were incoherent messes. Everything was so real. And yet it was completely unbelievable. Time travel just wasn't possible, it shouldn't be possible. But here she was, apparently 13 years into the future, with a Sanbi sealed inside of her with Jiraiya as her only source of information. She needed to get to Konoha. Then she would find Kakashi and ask him. She'd know if Kakashi was the real one, from everything to the scar on his left eye to his mannerisms she knew him like the back of her hand. Rin watched as Naruto and Jiraiya trained in the small field that houses the forest. That was all she could do at the moment, her body was still sore from her injuries and much of her was still covered in bandages. If she could use her medicine then she'd be fine. Just another depressing truth. They were doing a chakra exercise of some kind. Alright, brat. Jiraiya bellowed, hands on his hips. I want you to make the Rasengan, but I want you to make it bigger. Bigger? Naruto asked. How's that going to help me? Well, it'll be more powerful than a normal Rasengan. And if you can master that then you might just be able to handle some of the other stuff I'll be teaching you. Jiraiya rubbed his nose, turning away from Naruto. He was lying. And Naruto believed him. And I want you to make it 3 times as large. You got it, pervy sage. Naruto shouted, he created a shadow clone like it was the easiest thing in the world. 1 Mega Dengen coming right up. Jiraiya waved him off, walking towards her. Work on the name. Are you teaching him the Rasengan? Rin asked wide-eyed. Even Kakashi was having problems learning that, and her and Obito were just hopeless with it. Jiraiya laughed and sat down beside her. Teach nothing, he can already use the Rasengan, as good as Minato ever could, still trying to wean him off needing a shadow clone though. Did Minato ever try to teach it to you? Yay, she nodded. I could probably get the shape, but I don't have the power to use it. And with how my chakra is now. Then that's where we'll start. A giant slap to the back nearly knocked the wind out of her. Wait. What? Rin coughed, her entire body shook with a dull pain. You're going to train me? Yep, well at least after you finish recovering, then we're back on the road for the next stop. He smiled looking so sure of himself. I hear the ladies in the next town over are simply divine. Rin groaned. Miss Kushina did always say Jiraiya was a huge pervert and to avoid him at all costs. If at all possible I'd rather just return to Konoha or Jiraiya. No can do, Jiraiya groaned, placing both hands behind him, looking to the sky. I'm out here training Naruto to be able to stand up against the Akatsuki if they ever manage to get near him. Honestly though the brat probably thinks I'm training him to take them on. You're in the same basket as him now though. Cause of the Sanbi. Her stomach twisted at the name and she could feel its cold chakra royal against the seal. Jiraiya nodded. Yep, that's why I'm going to train both of you to control the beast inside of you, if even just a bit, anything to give you an edge against them. But wouldn't I be safe if I stayed in Konoha? Coward, that's what Obito would have said if she had said that to him, Kakashi, as well. Just running and hiding while others fought her battles. That's not who she was. Not anymore. I can train there right. And I might even be able to relearn medical ninjutsu. 6. I'm sorry Rin, he patted her on the back. I know you must want to see your friends and family. But I can't let you go back to Konoha. His voice lacked the cheerful nature with which it had before. Instead was a serious tone that carried the weight of the world with it. Not until you can at least partially control the Sanbi. Her throat burned and her stomach felt empty. Why? Because you're one of Minato's brat, he laughed, slapping her back once more. And Minato was my brat so that makes you my brat. Jiraiya's face fell and he glared at Naruto. Besides, my brat found you so that makes you my responsibility. So basically I'm a lost puppy that Naruto took in. Yep, now I have to feed you. And make sure you're trained. Jiraiya said before he let out a giant sigh. If you really want, I should be able to arrange for Kakashi to meet up with us in the future. Really? She stood quickly, her voice sharp and loud. Could you really do that? It'd mean so much. Kakashi, she had seen the photo of him, but there was still so much she needed to hear from him. With him she'd be able to know if this whole ordeal was real. No matter how much she wanted it to just be a dream. Sure, I'll send a message once we get to the next town. Jiraiya said with a groan. It's probably for the best that I don't surprise Tsunade with you either, so telling Kakashi might be good for my long-term health. An explosion ended their conversation. Everything had been going fine. He had the Rasengan in his hand and was trying to make it bigger. It worked. Kind of, it wobbled a bit. But that was nothing to worry about. Until it doubled in size and exploded, knocking out his clone and sending him flying backwards. Fortunately a tree caught him. A sharp ringing sound drowned out all other noise and a blunt pain locked away any other sensation. Okay, so maybe making a bigger Rasengan wasn't as easy as just pumping more chakra into it. In hindsight that seemed really stupid. But he was so close. He should just try again with slightly more chakra. Or was it less? Naruto? A female voice called running over towards him. It was Rin. She was still hurt herself but still ran towards him. She slid down next to him grabbing his hand. Are you okay? Yay, Naruto laughed, holding up his hand. His pinky hurt a lot. And he couldn't really move it too much. Or at least I will be, don't worry about it, I will heal fast. That made her mad. She was cute in a scary kind of way. A pain seared through him when she grabbed his hand and popped his finger back into place. Faster healer or not, if you don't set a dislocated finger like this it won't heal correctly and that'll just cause it to hurt more later. She ripped off part of her robe and began to tend his finger. Honestly, I guess boys just never learn. Don't they? Are you a doctor or something? Naruto asked wide-eyed. The only doctor he knew was Granny and that Kabuto was a jerk. If I could use medical ninjutsu I'd be able to heal this quicker. She huffed, her brown eyes sparkling with concern. So you'll just have to rest for now, no training for the rest of the day, you got that? Scary. Naruto nodded his head as quickly as he could, watching as Rin continued to dress his wounds. Gotcha. Good, she smiled sweetly at him. And he felt his heart thump in his chest and his cheeks began to warm. You know, his mouth did that thing where it talked without listening to his brain first. You're kind of cute when you're doing this. She glared at him, tugging on the fabric hard enough to send a sharp jolt of pain through his whole body. If you start hurting yourself on purpose I'll make you regret it. I won't, I promise. She was even cuter when she was angry. It was a good thing that he didn't need to try to hurt himself. The Rasengan was a lot harder than she remembered it being. But in some ways it was easier. She had more than enough chakra to try again and again. But it was wild and unwieldy, like she had gone in front, turning on a faucet to try to control the flow of a river. It was easier to fill up a glass, but it was also easier to drown in it. Something was in the water, a beast lurking in the depths, watching her, waiting, a constant reminder that she was not alone. And she would never truly be alone again. Rin tied a knot on the air balloon. It was about the right size, and her lips hurt from blowing up so many of these stupid balloons. The pack Jiraiya had given her wasn't even halfway empty yet. Careful. Just a sip. A drop. The balloon popped the moment her chakra filtered into it. Rin grit her teeth. What was the point? How was this going to help her? Lord Jiraiya, is this really what's best for me? The old man groaned, looking like a grandpa woken up from his afternoon nap. Huh? Oh, I'm still trying to figure out what to do with you. The Rasengan is busy work. How could Minato call this man his sensei? He was so flaky. Like he didn't have a plan and was just flying by the seat of his pants. It was frustrating. Look, Jiraiya sat up, rolling his shoulders to look her in the eyes. I know it is hard for you. But I'm still not sure on how best to handle the Sanbi. Still. Why the Rasengan? Wouldn't I be better off with an actual chakra control exercise? Rin asked. She couldn't get the Rasengan the first time, even with her excellent control. This just felt pointless. Sure, you can train however you want. Jiraiya shrugged. The Rasengan is just useful like that. It's versatile, just learning it helps you get better chakra control, and not just for form either, but spiritual as well. Minato had wanted it to be his ultimate legacy. His gift to the leaf that every leaf ninja would learn in the academy. That's why he made the steps the way they are, to make them so simple that an academy student could learn them. Really? He had taught them all or at least tried to. It did have all the elements of molding chakra, physical, power, and control. Yep, Jiraiya scratched at the scruff on his chin. Minato never did anything without at least 3 reasons. And what about you? Rin took another step forward. I've watched you train Naruto. It was less training and more Jiraiya just watching him with that same stupid look on his face. And I can't understand why you're having him do more of the same. Minato and Naruto are kind of the same. Jiraiya nodded towards Naruto as the boy maintained a Rasengan several times larger than a normal one. Rin focused on Naruto. Besides looks, Naruto was nothing like her sensei. I'm not seeing it. They do a lot with a little. Jiraiya cracked a smile. How many do you think your sensei knew? A lot. Minato always seemed able to help her with even medical jutsu and Obito with whatever fire he was having problems with. And how many did he use in a fight? 2. Minato only ever used 2. Hiraishin and Rasengan. 2. That's right, Minato fought using 2, sure he could summon toads. But when it was just him, he used 2. 2 and a lot of fancy throwing. Jiraiya laughed. But he did a lot with those 2 jutsu, more than a lot of other people ever could. And that's not just because of how powerful it is. It was as much his mastery over it as it was how he could use it. A simple one can be used in many more ways than a complicated one. Take Kakashi for example. What can his Chidori do? The man turned towards her and she was beginning to see the pieces. The Chidori was powerful and strong as the Rasengan perhaps. But it could only do one thing. Kill. Exactly. And the Hiraishin on its own can't do that. But it can do a lot more. There's a lot of value in being anywhere at any time. For a guy like Minato, who planned 5 steps ahead at all times, it was perfect. Jiraiya nodded towards Naruto. Naruto's the same way. But with his shadow clone jutsu, Naruto can be everywhere at once. Naruto makes things up as he goes, which is why having versatility is more important than having a bunch of powerful people that do one thing. Oh, Rin blinked. That actually made a lot of sense. But wouldn't a bunch of different things be better? For someone like my sensei. That can earn you the title God of Shinobi. He had it for every situation. Jiraiya's face fell and he stared at Naruto with dead eyes. But, Naruto. He's an idiot with a great future. But an idiot nonetheless. He might be a great teacher, Lord Jiraiya. Rin looked at Naruto just in time for his oversized Rasengan to blow out. But you're kind of an ass. Jiraiya just laughed. You're not the first woman to tell me that. But, I think I have an idea on where to start with you. Which is? Rin asked. She should trust Jiraiya more, he at least seemed like he knew what he was doing. That or he was really good at just making stuff up. He pointed towards a creek. We're going to go with the current. Instead of trying to get your chakra control to return to what it used to be, it might be better to just go with the flow and focus on doing what the Sanbi can do. And water's going to help me with that. Jiraiya nodded. The Sanbi has a strong affiliation with water, so learning to control water is your first step to controlling the Sanbi. Great, Rin muttered, staring at the babbling brook just through the trees. Just great. Hey brat. Jiraiya's voice drew his attention away from him just long enough for it to collapse in a puff of air. He had it that time. He knew he did. He could practically feel it in his bones. But that stupid pervert just had to ruin his concentration. What? Come here. Jiraiya waved him over to the stream where Rin stood ankle deep in the water. Stupid pervert, Naruto mumbled under his breath. Still, it meant he got to train with Rin. Unless Jiraiya was sending him to town again. He was totally going to spend all the pervert's money on ramen again if it was for something stupid. How was he even supposed to bring home beer and ladies? The creek was wide and crystal clear, filled with thousands of smooth stones. A few minnows could be seen, though the majority of them were nibbling at Rin's feet as she tried not to giggle. Bandages still covered much of her arms and the upper part of her legs, but she had her hair tied in a ponytail that sat on top of her head. She looked adorable. Hi Rin. The water was freezing as it rushed between his toes. Oh hi, she nodded at him. I don't really know what we're doing over here. That makes 3 of us. Jiraiya slapped a hand onto his head and ruffled his hair in that painful grating way. I'll be honest, I'm just taking a long shot with this, so if you feel like it's getting rough, I want both of you to let me know. Water is one of the easiest elements to manipulate. Jiraiya reached down, cupping a bit of the stream in his hand and letting it fall. Mostly because you can touch it and move it with your own hands. For that reason alone, it makes an excellent way to learn chakra control. Especially for those that have a water affinity, which Rin likely has because of the Sambi. Actually, water is one of my affinities, Rin smiled. But I never really practiced with it because I am medical. Affinities? What were these guys talking about? This sounded like another thing he would have learned if he paid attention in class. Which meant it was probably boring to talk about. But it's really awesome to do it right. What are those? Oh. Rin smiled, holding up a finger. Affinities are kind of what your chakra like to do naturally. It makes sharing an affinity with it easier to do, some are even impossible without an affinity. Kakashi's Chidori is an example of a lightning affinity. Man, that's so cool. Naruto squirmed in the water. He probably had a badass affinity like explosions or death. Wait, he used a lot of shadow clones. It had to be a shadow, right? Hey, pervy sage, what kind of an affinity do I have? Jiraiya shrugged. Wine probably. How do you know that? I don't know any. Wind sounded so lame. Jiraiya had to be wrong. Because you're such an airhead. Hey. Rin gave a soft laugh that squelched his anger. At least for right now. You two fight like siblings. Anyways, Jiraiya groaned, popping his neck loud enough to be heard. That's not important right now. I don't know any wind or water jutsu, but this is a training technique that Sarutobi-sensei taught me. He fished into the water and pulled out a stone. Now then, it's a bit like the second stage of the Rasengan, and that power is key. He rolled the smooth stone around in his hands, showing them every side of it, but so too is control. He pushed the rock down into the water, ripples began to form around his hand, radiating outwards, and bubbles began to form around the rock, growing more and more. I actually think this is what inspired Tsunade's monster strength. Or at least the failure state of it does. The bubbles stopped and he held up the same stone. Now completely spherical. You see, too much power and the stone cracks or shatters. Too little and nothing happens. Basically just push the water around the stone until you get something nice and smooth. With all the warning you had at the start, I thought you were going to give us something cool to do, like a new one, like being able to control the water and make it slap people. Naruto whined. I actually think it's a pretty creative exercise. Rin knelt down into the water, picking up one of the stones. For a moment nothing happened, then a crack formed. It's harder than it looks. Right now he looked like a jerk in front of Rin. Thanks a lot, Jiraiya. Slamming his hand into the creek, Naruto grabbed a rock. He looked towards Rin, smiling. So how did you make it do that? I'm not very good with chakra stuff. Well, you start by. So, are you an Inyazuka? If he wasn't training, Naruto seemed to lack the natural ability to leave her alone. In a lot of ways he was like a puppy, or like that cat she fed once that kept coming back and meowing at her for food. Only less cute and a lot harder to ignore. Maybe the cat was still alive. What are you talking about? Rin asked, poking at her food for the 100th time. She should eat, she knew that. But her appetite just wasn't there. So she poked, like a child playing with her food. Naruto sat down next to her, a cup of instant ramen in his hands. She was beginning to think that his hair was blonde from the sheer amount of noodles he ate. It couldn't be good for him. Then again, she really didn't have a lot of room to talk about proper eating right now. Those markings on your cheeks, they're kind of like what my friend Kiba and his sister have. Oh, he snapped his finger. And they were Inyazuka. Right, the dog clan. No, I'm not, my last name is Nahara. Naruto took a noisy slurp from his noodles. So, why do you have those purple stripes? Not that there's anything wrong with them, I think they're neat. Neat, huh? Rin took a bite of her food, popping a crunchy ball of rice into her mouth. Well, the woman that taught me medical jutsu had them. That was an old sting from her days in the academy before she was part of Team 7. Miku was killed in the Third Ninja War, so this is kind of my way of remembering her. I'm sorry, his ramen dropped ever so slightly. I shouldn't have asked a question like that. It's fine. It was fine. Everything was fine. Really fine. She was kind of like a mother to me, but it happened a long time ago. Way too long ago. Still. Naruto left his word hanging, a forgotten thought to never be touched again. He looked sadder about the subject than she was. What about you? She needed to change the subject to get her head out of the past. Being there wasn't going to help her. Another crunchy rice ball popped into her mouth. Somehow she had eaten half of her meal without even thinking about it. Are you from a clan or anything? Oh, now he really looked sad. Then he took a deep breath and sat up, shoulders back like he was overflowing with pride. Nah, I'm an orphan. You too, huh? Rin poked at one of the last few rice balls, rolling it around the container. When was the last time she talked about this? Right, when Miss Kushina was threatening to adopt her. That would have been something. Yay, the old man, a third Hokage, said that I was found after the fourth Hokage sealed the Kyuubi into me and that I was a newly born. Naruto smiled up at the sun as it began its long journey behind the mountains to bathe their valley in shadow. He said that my parents died as heroes. Did he ever tell you their names? Rin asked. He said that he'd tell me when I was older. Naruto smiled. I used to hope that they were gone on some super awesome top secret mission and one day they would come back and I'd have a family. Kind of silly, right? Not at all. She was out of food and the taste was already fading from her mouth. What's it like being a Jinchuriki? That killed Naruto's cheerful demeanor and the temperature dropped as the shadow of the mountain finally fell over them. Had she overstepped her bounds? He was so open with it before, it was practically the first thing he said to her. People avoid you? Naruto took a long breath. No matter what I did they kept ignoring me like I didn't exist. A lot of kids my age were told to avoid me. I got called a demon a lot. I got really annoyed by it. So I started to prank people. Then they noticed me and were really mad about it. They started to kick me out of their shops so I pranked them again. That probably didn't help. Yeah, well they deserved it. Naruto's chest swelled with pride. And I was good at it. One time I painted over all the Hokage faces. Iruka-sensei was so mad at that. Rin scrunched up her face and snorted. Minato was the fourth Hokage, right? Why would you paint the Hokage monument? It sounded like you liked them. Because I'm going to become the greatest Hokage. Believe it. He shot up pointing towards the sky. Rin blinked, feeling her lips tug into a smile. It felt like her first smile. Before she broke out into a massive fit of giggles. She could see it clearly now. The parallels that connected Naruto and Obito and that dream that connected them. I'm sure you will like Naruto. He grinned at her and took his seat once again. Thanks, I'm sure you'll become a great ninja as well. Sure. Her smile left with the wind. What was her dream? Minato-sensei had once told her that trying to find a dream was just as important as having one. Sometimes it was easy, sometimes it was hard. Kushina would then come in and shout something about never giving up until the very end. Sensei, huh? Say Naruto. She already has his attention, but he still perked up, sitting a bit more properly. Do you hate Minato-sensei for sealing the Kyuubi in you? Minato? His face scrunched up. Oh, he's the fourth Hokage, right? I mean, I kind of resent him for it, I guess. He fell onto his back staring up at the Wunning. I don't know. I just want to know why me? Why couldn't it have been some other kid? Someone that had a family or something. It was bad enough being an orphan, Naruto muttered under his breath. Well, I knew Minato-sensei pretty well. It was weird to think that he of all people could be killed. He seemed so invincible, both on and off the battlefield. It made sense that he was made the Hokage. He wouldn't do something for no reason, and if he chose you to hold the Kyuubi, then he must have believed that you were the best choice. That you could control it. Rin, he muttered, still staring up at the ceiling, tears gathered at the edge of his eyes, and his lips were twisted upwards into a smile. Thank you. She fell on her back next to him. No problem. Wait. Naruto shot up, wide eyes staring down at her. You were taught by the fourth Hokage. Did he have to be so loud? Thanks for watching my video, see you next time, till then sayonara.